That's her. The words came out broken, barely held together. Naomi pressed her finger against the newspaper, and her whole hand was shaking so badly the page rattled against the breakfast table. She didn't care. She couldn't care. There was only the photograph. The photograph, and the face in it, and the fact that she had been looking at that face every single night for 3 months, in the dark of an apartment she could barely afford, holding her sister's old sweater against her chest, and praying she hadn't made the worst mistake of her life by believing the police when they told her Cassandra had probably left on her own. Naomi, she didn't hear him. The man at the head of the table, the man whose house she worked in, whose breakfast she had just been preparing when she made the mistake of glancing at the newspaper he hadn't touched yet. His name was Elliot Hargrove, 54 years old, CEO of Hargrove Capital Partners, a private equity firm headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina, with a portfolio stretching across 7 states. He was worth approximately $3.8 billion. He had 2 homes, a private driver, and a breakfast table that cost more than Naomi had made in the past 2 years combined. He had just dropped his coffee, not set it down, dropped it. The cup had simply fallen from his fingers when Naomi's voice broke the morning quiet, and now hot black coffee was spreading slowly across pale marble floor tiles, and neither of them were looking at it. Naomi! His voice was careful now, the voice of someone who needed a moment to understand what they were seeing. Put the paper down. Look at me. She looked up. Her face, 24 years old, tear-streaked, the face of someone who has been holding a terrible thing alone for 93 days and has suddenly run out of the strength to hold it anymore. Told him everything before she said another word. "That is my sister," she said. "That is Cassandra. She has been missing since October." Elliot Hargrove looked at the newspaper. The headline read, "Unidentified woman found outside Asheville, NC. Memory loss. No ID." The photograph beneath it showed a young black woman sitting in a hospital bed beside a window. Her hair was tangled around her thin shoulders. A white bandage covered most of her left temple. She wore an oversized gray sweater that belonged to someone else, and around her neck hung a cracked employee identification badge, its edges worn smooth, the logo on its face almost entirely faded. Elliot looked at the badge. His jaw went tight in a way Naomi would not understand until later. "Are you certain?" he asked. Naomi took the newspaper from his hands without asking. She held it so close to her face that the image blurred. She didn't need to see it clearly. She had memorized every line of her sister's face, the way you memorize the face of the person who raised you. Not consciously, not deliberately, but completely, the way a body memorizes warmth. "This scar," she said. Her finger traced a thin line beside the woman's right eyebrow. "She got that when we were 11. She pushed me out of the way of a car in a parking lot and hit her head on the curb. She told our mother she fell playing basketball, so our mother wouldn't worry." Naomi's voice was dissolving. "And this earring, silver, one earring. She lost the other one 2 years ago, but she kept this one because our grandmother gave them to her. She told me she was keeping it until she could find the match." A tear hit the photograph and blurred the corner. "There is no match. She has been wearing one earring for 2 years. That is Cassandra." Elliot stood up from his chair. Mrs. Beatrice Holloway, the household manager, appeared in the doorway. She had been in the adjacent corridor when the cup fell and had the particular alertness of someone who has managed an important household long enough to distinguish between crises that require intervention and those that require witness. She looked at the newspaper. She looked at Naomi. She looked at the badge in the photograph. Something changed in her expression. "Mr. Hargrove," she said slowly. "That badge." He turned toward her. "The emblem," she said. "The blue and gray design. That was the Hargrove Capital Partners badge. Before the rebrand last spring, the silence that followed was the kind that has weight." Naomi looked from Beatrice to Elliot. She didn't understand it yet, but she felt it coming. "She worked here," Elliot said. He wasn't asking Beatrice. He was saying it out loud, because saying it out loud was the only way to make it real. "The woman in that photograph worked for my company." Naomi went completely still. "Before we go any deeper into this, I need you to stop for just 1 second. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. I am genuinely asking because I want to know how far these stories reach. We are American Truth Tales, and what I'm about to tell you about Cassandra, about Naomi, and about what that badge means, it will stay with you. Don't go anywhere. Cassandra Graves was 28 years old. She had been a project coordinator in the Community Investment Division of Hargrove Capital Partners for 22 months. She had a desk on the 11th floor of the Hargrove building in Uptown Charlotte. She had a direct supervisor named Craig Weston, a weekly status meeting every Tuesday at 10, and a commute from the east side of Charlotte that took 47 minutes each way on 2 buses. She had never told Naomi any of this. Not the company name, not the floor, not the bus number. She had told Naomi she was interviewing for a position at a financial firm downtown. She had said it with the careful optimism of someone who had been disappointed enough times that she no longer permitted herself to announce good things until they were permanent. When she got the job, she called Naomi from outside the building and said only, "I got it." 2 words. Naomi had cried. Cassandra had laughed in the way she laughed when she was trying not to. For 22 months, Cassandra had taken those 2 buses to the 11th floor and done work that her supervisors consistently rated as excellent. She had managed project timelines for a community housing initiative in 3 counties. She had caught a budgeting error that would have cost the company's charitable arm $400,000. She had done these things quietly, without announcement, the way Cassandra did everything. She had told Naomi, on one of their Sunday phone calls, that a senior partner had personally complimented her work in front of the team. She said it the way she always said good things, once, quickly, as if saying it more than once might use up whatever luck had produced it. 3 months ago, Cassandra had called Naomi on a Thursday evening. She had said she was thinking about making a change. She said she had heard about a position at a development nonprofit in Raleigh. She said she was going to look into it, and she would explain more when things were clearer. She had not called again. By Saturday, Naomi was calling every number she had. By Tuesday, she was at the police station. The officer who took her report had been polite. He had explained that Cassandra was an adult, that adults were permitted to relocate without notifying family members, and that in the absence of evidence of foul play, there was very little the department could do. Naomi had asked if there was evidence that nothing had happened. He had not answered that question. She had gone back 3 times. Each time, the answer was the same version of the same thing. She had posted Cassandra's photograph at bus stations, grocery stores, laundromats, churches, and hospital waiting rooms. She had called the shelters. She had driven to Raleigh and walked through the neighborhoods near the non-profit where Cassandra had supposedly been headed, showing her sister's photograph to strangers on sidewalks. She had kept Cassandra's sweater on the foot of her bed because she was afraid that if she put it away, it would mean she had stopped believing. Now Elliot Hargrove was standing in his breakfast room, saying her sister had worked for his company. "For how long?" Naomi asked. "Nearly 2 years. 2 years." Naomi set the newspaper down. "She worked for you for 2 years. I didn't know her personally, but you knew she was your employee." He stopped. "There are 412 people in this company, Naomi. That is not what I asked you." Beatrice moved quietly to Naomi's side. Naomi didn't acknowledge her. Her eyes were fixed on Elliot Hargrove with the expression of a person who has been polite in this house for 6 months and has just reached the end of what politeness can hold. "She is missing," Naomi said. "She has been missing for 3 months, and somewhere in your 412 employees, someone knew she was gone and did not think it mattered enough to say." Elliot looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone. "I need Maya's complete employment file." He stopped, corrected himself. "Cassandra Graves, project coordinator, community investment. I need her complete file on my desk in 20 minutes. Not a summary, the complete file." He paused, listened. "I don't care what time it is. Call whoever needs to be called." He ended the call and looked at Naomi. "The article mentions the hospital. I'm going to call them directly. Will you tell me anything else you remember about her? Anything identifying?" "A burn mark," Naomi said. Inside of her left wrist. She burned it on the oven when she was 14. She was cooking dinner because our mother was working a double shift. She stopped, took a breath. She cooked dinner every night when she was 14 because our mother was working doubles. She never told our mother she was doing it. She told her the stove had been acting up. Elliot dialed. And I want to stop right here, because I need you to understand something about Naomi in this moment. She has been searching for her sister alone for 3 months. She has been cleaning rooms in this man's house for 6 months, without knowing her sister had walked into his company building every single morning. And now she is standing in his breakfast room, giving a stranger the identifying marks of her sister's body, like she's filing a report. If you've ever searched for someone, if you've ever made calls that went nowhere and asked questions nobody wanted to answer, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. This story is for you. The hospital administrator was cautious but not unkind. She confirmed that the woman in the photograph was a current patient. She explained that she could not release medical information to anyone not verified as next of kin, and that verification required documentation, and that the process would take time she clearly did not have the power to waive. Naomi took the phone from Elliot's hand without asking. "My name is Naomi Graves," she said. "The woman you have is my sister Cassandra. She has a burn mark inside her left wrist, a scar beside her right eyebrow, and she has been wearing one silver earring for the past 2 years. She has been missing for 93 days. I have been calling every hospital between Charlotte and the Tennessee state line since October." Her voice cracked once and then steadied. "Please tell me she's alive." A pause. "Miss Graves," the administrator said, "your sister is stable." Naomi's knees buckled. Beatrice caught her by the elbow. Elliot was already speaking, arranging verification documents, arranging travel, arranging everything with the quiet efficiency of a man whose entire career had been built on making problems resolvable. But Naomi had stopped listening to him. She was looking at Cassandra's photograph in the newspaper, and she was hearing the word stable, and she was pressing her hand over her mouth to contain the sound that was trying to escape from somewhere that had been locked for 3 months. She was alive. The file arrived by digital transfer 40 minutes later. Elliot read it at the breakfast table, while Naomi changed out of her household uniform in the staff bathroom. She came back in jeans and a grey hoodie, and she looked simultaneously younger and older than she had 2 hours ago. He closed the folder. "Cassandra did not resign," he said. Naomi stopped walking. "What?" "She was terminated 3 months ago. The file gives the date as October 14th, the date Cassandra had called and said she was thinking about making a change. She was fired," Naomi said. "That is what the file says. The same week she disappeared." "Yes." Naomi sat down in a chair she had never sat in before in 6 months of working in this house. She sat down because her legs had decided that standing was no longer a reasonable option. "Why?" she asked. Elliot's jaw tightened. "The file lists unprofessional conduct, personal boundary violations, communication outside appropriate channels. My sister did not do any of those things." "I don't know what your sister did or didn't do, Naomi. What I know is that I signed the authorization on this file without reviewing the original evidence. What I know is that my signature is at the bottom of a document that may have been built on something I never verified." He set the folder down. "And I know that I should have asked more questions before I ever put my name on it." The morning moved around them. Light through the tall windows, the coffee still on the floor because neither of them had thought about it. Naomi looked at the folder. "Who filed the complaint?" Elliot was quiet for 1 second too long. "My wife," he said. Naomi had met Patricia Hargrove 3 times in 6 months. Patricia was 51, impeccable, and had a way of walking through spaces that made every piece of furniture in them look like it had been placed there specifically for her. She was not unkind to the household staff. She was something harder to define, present in the way that let you know she was watching without ever making it explicit. Naomi thought about Cassandra on the 11th floor. Cassandra, who was good at her job, who had been complimented by a senior partner in front of her team, who would have kept working quietly and excellently because that was how Cassandra worked. She thought about what it might look like to someone watching. A young black woman, excellent at her work, noticed by the senior partner. the senior partner being Patricia Hargrove's husband. "My sister was not pursuing your husband," Naomi said. "I know that isn't what you're going to find when you pull the full records." Elliot looked at her steadily. "What makes you certain?" "Because I know my sister. She worked 2 jobs for 3 years to help me finish high school. She sent me $40 every month when she was making $11 an hour. She cooked dinner at 14, so our mother wouldn't know she was exhausted." Naomi's voice was completely level. "My sister does not pursue married men. She does not have time. She has been too busy holding everything up." Elliot looked at the file. "I'm going to pull every original communication," he said. "Not the screenshots, not the summaries, the original files from the server." "We drive to Asheville," Naomi said. It wasn't a question. He looked up. "You are not going alone," she said. "That is my sister, in that hospital. And somewhere between the complaint that was filed against her and the hospital bed she is lying in, something happened to her that started in your building. So yes, we are driving to Asheville." The car was ready in 12 minutes. Beatrice brought a bag she had packed without being asked. Food, water, a change of clothes, and at the bottom, wrapped carefully, a photograph of Naomi and Cassandra at what looked like a graduation. Cassandra had one arm around Naomi and was holding a grocery bag in the other hand, and they were both squinting against the sun outside their apartment building. "For when she needs to remember," Beatrice said. Naomi held the photograph for a moment. "She may not remember me," she said. "She has been saying your name," Beatrice replied. "The article mentioned it. She doesn't remember her own name, but she keeps saying a name. It took me a moment to see it when you were reading. The article said the name she keeps repeating is Naomi." Naomi stood in the hallway of Elliot Hargrove's house, with the photograph in her hand and Beatrice's words arriving in waves. Cassandra did not remember who she was, but she remembered who Naomi was. The drive to Asheville was 2.5 hours. Elliot's assistant handled the communication with the hospital. The original server files began arriving on his phone in fragments. Emails, meeting notes, project records, communications flagged as inappropriate that turned out to be a follow-up on a budget report, a rescheduled project meeting, a request for clarification on a deliverable that was 3 weeks overdue. "These are work emails," Naomi said. She wasn't looking at the screen. She was watching the highway. "Yes," Elliot said. "Someone called them personal. Someone selected the messages that looked personal when removed from context and removed the context. And you approved a termination based on that." "I approved a termination based on a summary that was built on that. I did not look at the underlying documents." He paused. "I should have." Naomi turned toward the window. "My sister had been with your company for almost 2 years. She reported to people who evaluated her as excellent. She caught a budget error that saved your charitable division $400,000. She paused. "And when a complaint was filed, nobody called her in. Nobody asked her side. Someone just cut off her badge access and handed her a box." Elliot said nothing. "You don't have to say anything," Naomi said. "I'm not asking for an explanation right now. I just need you to understand that while you were not asking questions, my sister was walking out of your building with a box of her belongings and nowhere to go, and apparently no way to defend herself against something she hadn't done." She looked at the window again. "And then she disappeared." The hospital was a county medical center on the outskirts of Asheville, a quiet 2-story building set back from the road with clean windows and a small garden near the entrance. A woman named Dr. Renata Wells met them at the door and explained what she could. Cassandra was stable. She had been found 3 days ago near a church on the outskirts of town, unable to identify herself, disoriented and cold. A minor head injury, consistent with a fall. Retrograde amnesia, likely temporary, but the timeline was uncertain. She could speak, walk, recognize objects. She could not remember her name, her work, her apartment, or her sister. "But she says a name," Dr. Wells said. "She has said it repeatedly since she was admitted, especially when she becomes frightened." "Naomi," Naomi said. Dr. Wells looked at her. "Yes." Naomi pressed both hands over her mouth and closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Then she opened them and said, "Take me to her." The room was small and quiet. A window, a blanket, a chair. Cassandra was sitting up in the bed, looking at her hands in her lap, with the careful attention of someone who is studying something unfamiliar. She looked up when the door opened. She looked at Naomi. Nothing moved in her face. No recognition. No warmth. The careful, guarded attention of a person who has been speaking to strangers for 3 days and has learned that strangers sometimes want things from her that she cannot give. Naomi had prepared for this. Dr. Wells had warned her. Elliot had warned her. She had told herself on the drive, specifically and clearly, that she was prepared for this. She was not prepared for this. She stood in the doorway, and her sister looked at her like a stranger, and the 3 months of searching that had lived in her chest since October tried to leave all at once, and she had to grip the doorframe to stay standing. "Hi, Cass," she said. Her voice was small and steady. Both of those things at the same time. Cassandra's head tilted slightly. "Do I know you? My name is Naomi. I'm your sister." Cassandra looked at the doctor. Dr. Wells nodded. Cassandra looked back at Naomi. "I don't remember a sister," she said. "I know." Naomi took one step into the room. "Can I sit down?" A pause. Then, "Okay." Naomi sat in the chair across from the bed and kept a full arm's length between them. She put the photograph on the blanket, where Cassandra could reach it. Cassandra looked at it without touching it. "That's us," Naomi said. "Outside our apartment building, about 1.5 years ago. You had just helped me carry groceries up 4 flights of stairs, and you were annoyed about it, but you weren't going to say so." Something shifted in Cassandra's face. Very small. Not recognition. Something adjacent to it. Like a word you almost remember. "You were always like that," Naomi continued. "You handled the hard parts, and then you told me everything was fine." Cassandra reached out slowly and picked up the photograph. She looked at the 2 figures in it for a long time. "We look alike," she said. "Everyone says you look like our mother, and I look like you. That doesn't make sense." "No," Naomi agreed. "It doesn't." Cassandra almost smiled. Almost. Then she reached into the pocket of her hospital sweater and pulled out something she had apparently been holding for some time. A cracked employee badge, its lanyard still attached, the emblem almost completely faded. "I was holding this when they found me," she said. "I don't know why." Naomi looked at the badge. She thought about 22 months of bus rides and budget reports and budget errors caught and work rated excellent and a senior partner's compliment and a complaint filed without evidence and a termination signed without a conversation and a box of belongings carried down an elevator and a woman walking out into October with nowhere particular to go. She thought about her sister holding onto that badge in the dark for 3 days because she couldn't remember her name, but she still remembered something that had mattered. "I know why," Naomi said. "Before we go to the end of this story, I need to ask you something. Cassandra can't remember her own name, but she held on to that badge. She held on to the evidence of who she had been, even when she couldn't find herself inside it. I want you to share this video with someone who needs to hear that. Someone who has been erased by a system, dismissed by people who should have listened, told their experience wasn't enough to investigate. Drop a comment telling me who you're watching this for. And stay with me for the ending, because what Naomi does next is the part of this story that I think about most. The conversation that followed happened in pieces, over hours, in the way that trust builds when one person is patient and the other is frightened, and both of them are trying. By the end of the first day, Cassandra knew Naomi's name. By the end of the second, she had asked to hear stories about their childhood. Not because she remembered them, but because hearing them felt, she said, like standing near a fire after being cold for a long time. You didn't know the fire, but you recognized the warmth. Elliot arranged for a specialist in Charlotte. He arranged for the medical transfer, the private room, the additional neurological evaluation. He did all of this without being asked, and without presenting it as generosity. "This isn't charity," he said, when Naomi started to say something. "I know what it is," she said. "It's the beginning of a responsibility you should have felt 3 months ago." He accepted that. The employment file investigation revealed what Naomi had already known. The original communications were project emails. The screenshots submitted as evidence had been cropped and recontextualized. The complaint had been filed by Patricia Hargrove without any corroborating documentation. The human resources process had moved to termination within 4 days, without a single conversation with Cassandra. When Elliot confirmed this to Naomi in the hospital corridor, she listened without reaction. Then she said, "I want 3 things." He waited. "I want the termination removed from her record, completely. I want her lost wages and medical expenses covered. And I want the process that allowed this to happen reviewed by someone outside your company who has no reason to protect it. Those are reasonable requests." "They are not requests," Naomi said. "They are the minimum. We can discuss what comes after the minimum once my sister remembers her name." He nodded. "And Naomi," he said, as she turned to go back into the room, "I'm sorry I signed that file." She looked at him for a long moment. "I know you are," she said. "I also know that sorry doesn't change what Cassandra carried alone for 3 months. So what you do next matters more than what you say right now." She went back to her sister. 3 weeks later, Cassandra remembered the radio. She woke up on a Tuesday morning in the Charlotte hospital room and said to Naomi, "We had a radio in the kitchen. The antenna was broken. You used to hold it at a certain angle to make it work." She said it the way you say a thing that arrives fully formed, already certain, the way memory comes back not gradually, but all at once when the door finally opens. Naomi had been holding coffee. She set it down very carefully on the bedside table because she was going to cry, and she didn't want to spill it. "You used to hold a wooden spoon against the antenna," she said. Cassandra stared at her. "That's right. You were very proud of that solution. That worked. It worked for 3 years." Cassandra looked at the window. "I remember our apartment," she said. "The kitchen, the cabinet that didn't close all the way." A long pause. "I remember you doing homework beside the window." Naomi sat on the edge of the bed. "I remember," Cassandra said, softer now, "being scared to tell you things, because you would worry, and I needed you to be okay. I know. I should have told you." "You should have told me," Naomi agreed. "And I should have made you feel like you could." She took her sister's hand. "We're going to do that differently." Cassandra looked at their joined hands. "I'm angry," she said. "About the job, about the badge, about what they did without ever asking me. I know. What happens to them?" "The investigation is ongoing," Naomi said. "The termination is off your record. The specialist says your memory will continue to come back. And when you are ready, and only when you are ready, you can decide what you want the world to know about what happened to you." Cassandra was quiet for a moment. "And the badge?" Naomi reached into her jacket pocket. She had been carrying it since the hospital in Asheville. She placed it on Cassandra's palm. Cassandra closed her fingers around it. "They tried to make this the only thing anyone knew about me," she said. "I know. It isn't." "No," Naomi said. "It isn't. Not even close. If Cassandra's story found something real in you today, if you thought about the people in your own life who carry things alone because they don't want to worry you, who hold on to evidence of who they are even when they can't remember their own name, then this story did exactly what it came to do. We are American Truth Tales. Hit the like button, right now. 1 second. It tells us you were here. Subscribe to American Truth Tales. We are here every single week, with the stories that deserve to be told. The ones where the badge means more than the people who issued it intended. The ones where a sister holds a wooden spoon against a broken antenna and makes something work by refusing to accept that it can't. Leave a comment. Tell me which moment hit you hardest. I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, someone who has been dismissed, disbelieved, or made to feel like their word wasn't enough, share this video with them. Because sometimes the most powerful thing one person can do for another is refuse to let them be a mystery. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Thank you for being here. We'll see you in the next one.